Hi everyone, welcome to our Neogenian Oculus live stream. My name is Susan and over here is my co-host Philip, and today we are continuing on with where we were last week. And Philip, why don't you tell everybody what we are going to be talking about?
Yeah, so we thought this would be a really good idea for a live stream because we actually had some good questions about hyperawareness, and that's our topic for tonight. You may have noticed from the title, Are You Hyper Aware? And that's something that sometimes people probably ask themselves, and we've been asked that before. Am I hyper aware? How do I know I'm hyper aware? And also, we thought it would be very beneficial to go over this again. As you know, we covered it in our last live stream that we did, because there's so many different components to hyper awareness, so many different topics that go into that we thought we could expand on what we talked about last time. So we may do a little bit of review, kind of go over some of the things that we touched on last time, while also adding in some new things that are really actually kind of exciting this week. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you to everybody who comments and likes and shares the video. As you guys have seen, there's some new features in the chat. So thank you for everybody who chats and joins us today. I see Angela, who's been a member for 14 months at the wavelet level, says learning a lot. Thank you. And
Thanks, Angela.
that's all that Susan and I can hope for. So we do these streams to try and help clarify things, and also we want to be a beacon for the Neogenian community for all things Neogenian.
Yeah, so welcome to anybody who's new. And it's good to see a lot of familiar people out there. Thank you for coming. One of the things that I wanted to add to what Philip said about what we're discussing, and first off, let me know, do we sound okay? Because I know that sometimes my speaker can cause problems if the sound is up too. So I have it kind of low. I just want to make sure Philip sounds good. He doesn't have any weirdnesses. Yeah. I should be wearing earphones, but I'm not. Okay, good. So one of the things that I wanted to say, one of the things I realized kind of from between the last live stream and this one is hyperawareness is difficult to grasp. This is not an easy one. And we realize that by seeing lots of different questions. And like Philip said, we have quite a few questions we're going to go over, things that would be very reasonable to ask.
And also things that are fun to discuss.
Yeah, definitely. We love talking about these things. But one of the things I realized from last time where let me show the graphic that I put up last time. I think it's this one. Yes, this one. I made this graphic to show how the triadic perspective and the tools to develop hyperawareness kind of relate. You need the triadic perspective, the avatar, the zedic, and the absolute. But if you have those, you'd be hyper aware. But the tools to get there, these three areas of metacognition, concept networking, and phenomenological experience, those are the things that are going to get you to those other perspectives. And so both sides are hyper awareness. Let me just close this.
I see a couple interesting comments that we are actually planning on discussing later in the stream. Cool. I see Joanna said, you cannot be hyper aware 24/7 or else you'd be going insane. And also Ryan says, my way of thinking is if I have to ask, am I hyper aware? Then I'm pretty sure that I'm not hyper aware. And those are things we're going to discuss here in a little bit.
Yeah, that's very astute, Ryan.
Yeah, very. And also hello to Camille the Alchemist. I don't know if I've recognized your name before, but welcome if you're new.
Yeah, I saw that too. Welcome. So one of the things that I realized in what we talked about last week, which was more, what are the steps to becoming hyper aware? And I realized this time we're kind of jumping the gun in a little ways. What we really want to focus on is the analog all. So we're going to go back to the section that's actually before the section we talked about mostly last week, because getting to the understanding of the analog all is very close to hyper awareness. And we tend to, or in the past tended to, sort of not gloss over it, but we would say, okay, let's talk about the analog I, which we're going to go over again today. And then, okay, now let's talk about the analog all. And now let's work on this thing that's far away, which is hyperawareness. And that's not really correct. A better way to look at it, I have realized, is yes, the analog I is very understandable. We'll go over it again, but it's very easy to grasp. The analog all is way down here. That's the one that we really need to work on to get that. We can't just sort of say, oh, it's this is the definition of it. Oh, now let's focus on hyperawareness, because the analog all,
too easy to do.
The analog all is the thing that we really need to work hard on understanding. And hyperawareness is a little bit more than that. So I'm trying to sort of reorganize how we think about this and how we want to focus on it. So we really want to go back and cover the analog all a lot more, because that is what we want everybody to develop. It's another like a structure that you need to develop in your psyche, and that's the thing we're going to focus on talking about. But first, let's just quickly go over the analog I, which is a concept by Julian Jaynes and the metaphor me as well. The analog I is the mental model that we develop that allow in our mind that allows us to use that model of ourselves to place ourselves in situations that we can then think about. So
it's also very tied to self-awareness.
Yes, thank you, Heretical. Thank you so much. Oh, by the way, we always forget to do this, but thank you to everybody who does super chat. It means a lot to us. Very sweet. And we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So the analog I is this mental model of yourself that you then can imagine yourself in different situations. So you can
I need to go to the store, and you're picturing yourself in the store.
It's like what we do when we're going to bed and we're imagining tomorrow. It's like, oh, I have to go here. I have to I have to pick up somebody or go food shopping or whatever I need to do. And that's you imagining, what you are going to be doing.
And it can be a very useful tool.
Oh, we need that. We need that. That's okay. Oh, I'm so sorry, Outlier. I hate the ads. I have a paid subscription, so I never see them, and I always forget that people get those. Being monetized does really help us, though, so we appreciate you putting up with it. Thank you. Making plans for the weekend. Exactly. It's Angela said. So it's you imagining what you're going to be doing, and having the ability to do that is extremely important. If you don't have
that. And
a lot
of people probably do that without even realizing it, because they don't have a word for the concept.
Yeah, they haven't. We just do it. We get to a certain age where we have self-awareness, but we just start imagining ourselves in different situations. If we're thinking about, like, for example, I would obsess about like a test I had to take or something, and I would think about it a lot and imagine all the things that could go wrong. That's what you're doing. But and the metaphor me simply goes along with that, and it's how you think about yourself, or how others view you. So like, what kind of roles do you play? Or you're like, you're a daughter. I'm a daughter. I'm a YouTube what?
A YouTube presenter.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that. I'm an aunt. So that's the metaphor me. It just kind of goes with the analog I. The next one is the Zedic analog is just more than the analog I. If you're, of course, familiar with our system and you know what a zeta is, the Zedic analog allows you to recognize your eternal self. So it's not just the I the ego, which by the way is Jung's term for, so if you're wondering like another kind of concept for the analog eye, that would be the Jung's ego. So the Zetic analog allows you to consider your eternal existence as a zeta.
The entire journey.
Yeah, the whole, the unfoldment. So past lives and, future, future reincarnations. I'm brave because I don't fully close the curtains. Oh, you mean like behind me? Yeah, that's funny. It goes out to our outside porch. It's usually a pretty safe area, but now I'm going to worry about it. Anyway, and hi Star. So that's the Zetic analog, and now we move to the analog all, which is the one that we're going to focus on for a little while now. And then we're going to get to these questions, which will be fun to answer about hyperawareness.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool ones that we have.
Yeah, and that will also, I hope, help you to get a better idea about hyperawareness. So as we've said before, the analog all is it's another structure that you need to. Thank you so much. I'm so not happy with my hair right now. So Angela, that was very sweet for you to say that. But the analog all is another structure that we need to create in our psyche. All right. Mm-hmm. And instead of just it is just like me. It is the mental model of all of reality, everything. Yeah. So,
and when we say that is a structure in the psyche, that can probably sound strange. Like, what is a structure of the psyche? So it's not something that you're just going to snap and have without working on it. You have to work on that and kind of flex it like a muscle. I think we said that in the last live stream. But yes, it's not a physical structure, not within your brain. It is a mental structure of consciousness that develops when you have this understanding.
Oh, exactly. It's not like it's a physical part of the brain that gets turned on or something. This is did you hear my mother?
Was it a sneeze?
No, she's asking my husband if he wants pizza. I'm so sorry. If you guys can hear that, I never know. It's loud for me. Anyway.
Oh, thank you to Camille the Alchemist, who is new,
and
became
welcome.
a member at the waveform level.
Oh, thank you so much. And Mysterious Stranger said hello. Hi. Okay, let's carry on. I get distracted so easily, unfortunately. So where were we? Oh, the mental structure. Yeah, this is something that is when you've been told that it exists, that it is how reality operates, and you start thinking about it, and you start thinking about everything. Let me show you my little graphic that I always show. Whoops. For anybody who hasn't seen this is my little visual representation of the absolute, everything that exists. So we have over this side the frequency domain, which always contains the source, and the source is the collection of all the basis waves of every one of us as a zeta. We each are a collection of a complete collection of every frequency, and all together, all of us, the basis waves, sort of like the keys on the piano. We each have a piano of keys. That's what this never goes away. This is eternal. This is necessary. And when we start making music with our keys and combining things, we get this part of it, but it's still frequency domain. And as soon as we have this part here, not more than this, just this part here, we have the holos, what we consider.
So I was going to say,
this is very helpful, Angela. Yeah.
In saying that the analog all is all of reality and everything that exists, it should also be pointed out that means that it should be the same for everybody, right?
Okay, well, we're not quite there yet, but that's really good. Philip's always on, like, watching the clock, and I am too, because we have a lot to discuss. Yeah.
But it's fun to, we don't want to rush through it, because it is fun to understand these new
Yeah.
concepts.
I don't want to just push through and say, well, this is this and that's that and the whole thing together and now let's move on, because these things are hard to grasp. I have to remind myself of that we're familiar with it, but I don't want to rush anybody else who is still working on grasping this. So we have the frequency domain, we have the holos. This is really good. You can create one of these yourself. It doesn't have to be fancy. And together, both sides together is at the absolute, meaning it is
And you
everything
can think
that
of
exists.
it like two sides of the same coin, because I see Bridget says, interesting that source is only on the frequency domain side of the coin, but the source is in the holos too.
No. The holos, sometimes it's how it's what you're thinking, that, and it just coming out in a different way. And sometimes I have a hard time with that. The source is eternal and necessary, must exist, always exists, never doesn't exist. But the holos is not eternal. It is, and it's contingent. It's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily exist.
That's why I love your visuals, because I'm a very visual person, and it's definitely helpful. And I know people in the comments have said that it's helpful to actually be able to see the two sides.
I know, it's like a stupid little circle with two sides, but it's really good as a visual tool. So the source there, imagine that there are times when only the source exists and there's no combinations. This is the point when we are all in complete symmetry, when there's nothing that distinguishes the zetas. It's just like the piano keys, each of us with our complete set of basis waves. But as soon as the symmetry breaks and we start combining waves, and this part, which is still frequency domain, it's still all the completely mental waves. When that exists, the holos immediately, it's not this first and then this, it's when you have this part, you also have this.
And Joanna says the holos is a product of the source.
Yeah, it's a Fourier transform of the frequency domain. So it's two sides of the same coin. And if you have this, you have this. You can't not. But when you only have the source, there is no transform of that. Maybe that was a better way of saying it. Okay, so it's hard for me. I get so distracted. I'm going to let Philip just look at the questions and pull out anything that's really important.
There's really good comments. You guys are. It's nice to see that you guys are trying to really understand and grok that. So definitely feel free to put your questions in if there's anything that you're not sure about. That's definitely helpful.
Yeah, and remember that even if you just get a little bit further along and you have like a little aha moment where you understand it a little bit better, but you're still not 100%, the best way to work with that is to contemplate it and think of questions, think of things that don't quite make sense. Like, I wonder this, or maybe you can visualize it this way, and then ask us, and we will bounce that back at you. I'm very visual, Laura. So anyway,
let's get back to the analog all.
Okay, so the absolute is the analog all is the mental model of everything that exists.
Of all that exists.
And so that is our goal. That is what we're trying, that's the structure that we are trying to create in our psyches. Hi, Elise. Thank you for coming. Elise is one of our moderators. It's good to see you. And hi, Eric. So the analog all is our goal. That is what we are trying to create in our psyche, so that we can use that the same way we use the analog I, that we have this awareness then of the everything. Now, okay, I just
We were
wanted
getting
to,
back to since the
yes.
analog all is all of reality, should it be the
Yes.
same for everybody?
Okay, that's a really good one. What are you drinking? Did I ask you before?
A little bit of absinthe.
Mm, I am not. I am drinking Zevia, my Zeta soda. Um, okay, so that's a good question. What do people think about that? Let's ask. What do you guys think, knowing what we just said about the analog all being the mental model of everything that exists? Should everyone have the same model of the analog all?
You want to do a poll?
No, I don't know how to poll that. Like, I don't know what answers to put. I just want to
Oh,
see what
okay.
people, let's just let people, you know, I've tried, I'm going to just, chat for a few minutes while you
Here's an
guys,
interesting question from Bridget.
oh,
What is the difference between the absolute and the analog all? We kind of anticipated that question a little bit.
okay, well, the analog all is the mental model of the absolute. So the absolute is everything that exists. The analog all is what we call that structure in the psyche
Mhm.
that represents all of that, so that we can am I going in and out of focus? I'm sorry if I am.
I don't think so.
Okay. That so that we can use it and think about it as a tool. And having the analog all, is what allows us to move on. Oh, thank you so much. And
And
Starlight got it.
Starlight got
Thank
your
you,
gifted
Elise.
membership.
That was so nice.
And I think Starlight's new, so excellent. You'll have a membership for a
Yeah.
month. And I think we forgot to tell people after our live stream today, we're doing a members only live stream, and Susan posted the link to that in the posts
Section.
tab on our YouTube
Yeah.
channel.
So Star, you can come to that now. Okay, somebody had a question. The analog, so Bridget said the analog all is just the absolute in the analog all is just the absolute in the frequency domain, but the absolute is the all. But okay, I'm so confused. Both in the frequency domain and holos. The analog all is just the absolute in the frequency domain. No, the absolute is everything. So it's the absolute
The
is
totality of reality.
it's the totality. So the absolute is all of the frequency domain, all of the holos, everything, both sides, all of this. That's why I had to do a model that I could show both sides, and I couldn't have just a flat one, like a piece of paper with one side, because
Yeah.
and it was Morg who said you need to put the holos on the other side of this. So I hope that helps, Bridget. And then outlier, I'm always afraid to say this. It's Ausreiser, right? Ausreiser, outlier, are the absolute and the zeta configuration one and the same? That's a good one. Okay, hang on. So the absolute is it's kind of like these things are so subtly have such subtleties between them.
Yeah.
The absolute, again, is both sides. It's everything. The zeta configuration is the collection of all zetas. So when you're using zeta configuration, and the zeta configuration is what creates the holos. So it's, in a way, yes, but it's really a matter, this is the way I look at it, it's a matter of, when you're discussing these things, what is the focus of the thing you're talking about? So if you're talking about zetas, like and in the conversation, whatever you're, like you're asking a question about zetas and you want to refer to all the zetas, then you'd use zeta configuration, because that's the That's really your. Didn't you have a good analogy for this?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I was going to say Camille had a question related to what you were just saying. Camille said, "What's the difference between the absolute all and the zeta configuration?"
Okay, do you mean analog all? Okay, there's the absolute and there's the analog all. The absolute is all of this together. So if you make your
And
own little model.
Bridget says, but the absolute is all that exists in both the frequency domain and the holos. The absolute is all of it.
Both sides. But I just want to go back to what Camille said. What's the difference between I'm going to say you mean the analog all and the zeta configuration. The analog all is the name for the concept, the structure that we have in our psyche that allows us to consider different like existence. But instead of the analog I, which allows me, which I have in my psyche, to allow me to put myself, just me, in different situations, the analog all structure that I have allows me to see existence and reality, but from the point of view of understanding that everything that exists, meaning the frequency domain, all of the zetas, the holos, like all of it. So like I said, there's subtle differences, but these are good questions because it will help you to see how everything is related.
And so it's important to point out that the analog all is massively important for the contribution towards hyper awareness, which is the entire point of our stream today, which is what we are talking about. So maybe it would be a good idea to kind of reaffirm what is hyper awareness, which we've kind of done it a little bit by talking about how important it is to have an understanding of the analog all. Did you want to pull up your graphic one more time?
Yeah, I can, but we're not here. Here it is. On here, so on the left side again is the triadic perspective. Oh, hi, Dreamy, and thank you and welcome to Wavelet, and please come to the members stream afterward. On the left side of the graphic, you can see that that's the triadic perspective, avatar, zetic, and absolute. And on the right side are the tools to develop those, the triadic perspective. You're going to need the metacognition. You're going to need concept networking and phenomenological experience. So let me just close this again. And I wanted to say, Telios, hi, and welcome if you're new. Zeta is like a node in the network mind. Yet we are each a node in the network mind, but don't minimize that. we are each, extremely important, and everything's flying by so fast. But yes, we are each a node in the one, the collective.
And if we miss your question, we apologize, but save those because we can answer those also in the members stream.
Yeah, because there's so many. I can see so many.
We have a very large list that we want to get to of questions that people have presented to us and that we've been asked in the past. And we thought we would go over some of those. Also, for any of you who are not aware, on Sundays in Discord, we do what's called the Nexus Academy. And the whole reason for the stream, Susan and I discussed going over some of these terms and some of these questions because we got quite a few nice questions in the Nexus Academy. So if anybody becomes a member of Morg's YouTube or Patreon, they have access to that Discord community, and you can join us in the Nexus Academy. But we saved a few questions that we thought we would go over that could be hugely beneficial to understanding hyperawareness. Do you think we should go ahead and get into those?
Yeah, I think we should, because we're already halfway through and we kind of wanted to leave a half an hour for what we just did and a half an hour for the end. But I see so many good questions in here and things that I want to get to. Bridget just said, sorry, still confused on what how the zeta configuration and analog all differ from the absolute. You understand the absolute is everything. So the zeta configuration is specifically all of the, if you're thinking in terms of zetas, each of us is a zeta, collection of frequencies, then the zeta configuration is all of us. It's a way for us to discuss the zetas, from that perspective. And then you said, how the analog all differs from the absolute. Again, the absolute is all the frequency. It's the holos. The analog all is like the mental structure that it's not referring to all of the absolute. That's the absolute. It's referring to a structure that we need in order to talk about that, in order to think about that. It's a model
of the absolute. Yeah, so if you can think about Susan's little coin there in your mind, if you have a model of that and can understand it to a great degree of how those different parts differ, the parts of the absolute, the source, the frequency domain, and the holos, if you can develop a model of that and have a great understanding of it, that is your analog all. Right.
Okay, I hope that helps. I'm so far up. I need to go down.
So since the title of this live stream is called Am I Hyperaware? We have quite a few questions about hyperawareness. Bridget says, so the analog all is just a model. It's a mental model of the absolute.
Yes. And somebody, Sarah, hi Sarah, said analog all sort of like collective consciousness. No, the analog all is simply that model that we have that allows us to think and have ideas and concepts and just discuss all of reality. It's gives us that understanding of what. Okay, no problem. I lost my train of thought. The analog all is that mental model of everything that exists that we can now, once we have that, now we can talk about it. Now we can think about it. The same way that if we have the analog I, we can put ourselves individually into different scenarios. Okay. But models are never complete. That is why they are models. Well, okay, you can change your conception, thinking of the analog I. You can change your conception about yourself, but the analog I is simply the model of you, not the. It's like just the little figure that you put in your head. It's not the description of the figure. It's not any specific details. It's simply the structure of you. You're recognizing that you are self-aware and can think of yourself however you want to think of yourself as a concept that you can then place into different scenarios.
Yeah.
Okay. And the analog all is the same thing.
The analog all a map. You could kind of think of it like that.
Kind of.
But it's not just confined like of Earth or of California or something. It's of all of reality.
Yeah.
So it can be kind of hard to conceptualize.
This is why this is hard. This is why actually grasping the analog all is hard. And I just want to talk about didn't you say the difference between the analog all and then hyperawareness? And we really need to start getting to some of these questions. And Morg has a really good sentence or two on page 237 of Psychogenesis, which I'm going to read because this is one of the sort of like the going from analog all to hyperawareness, because they're very close. Going from analog I, having an analog I, to having an analog all is the huge jump. This is what we are trying to get people to create in their heads, a really good understanding of reality as it exists, as we know it, which is vastly different from simply the analog I that we all have. All right, that's a huge leap. But going, as I said in the beginning, going from this analog all, once we have that, to hyperawareness is just a little bit more of an extension of that. And I'm going to just say that we tended to focus more on quickly covering what the analog I and the analog all were, and then saying, now let's talk about hyperawareness, when really it's the analog all that we need to focus on. So I'm going to read this little 2 sentences. When a zeta becomes hyperaware, it becomes conscious of its triune identity, remember, as a localized entity on Earth, as an individual zeta, and as part of the absolute network. Those are the 3. So the avatar perspective, the Zedic perspective, and the absolute. Those are the 3 when I put up the graphic on the left. Okay, so it begins to operate with this understanding, thereby contributing to the development of a conscious network mind. So once you have that analog all, and then you're now becoming hyper aware from that understanding of the
Heretical said was at page 147.
No,
it was
237. 237 in psychogenesis. So you're working on establishing the analog all, which is the hard one. This is tricky. But the jump then to the hyper awareness is that really understanding that triune identity really well.
Yeah.
The understanding of your avatar self, Zedic self, and absolute. And
we're kind of answering the first question that we had in our list of hyper awareness questions, which is, how do I know if I'm hyper aware? And Susan kind of just answered that with that reading of the 2 sentences from Moore's book. And it also made me think of the comment from Ryan at the beginning of the stream saying, if I have to ask if I'm hyper aware, then I'm pretty sure that I'm not hyper aware.
You nailed it, Ryan. Absolutely. When we talked about this the other day, it's kind of like, that's what I always think. If I'm not sure, now the way I look at it for myself, which is, may not be correct. I tend to think, without having that phenomenological experience, really like a huge experience, that I don't like to say, oh, I'm hyper aware. But I mean, Morg said, yes, you are hyper aware, but that's because I do have a very strong understanding of the components of it. But I don't like to say that because I feel, I really want to have that phenomenological experience part.
And we're going to have some more interesting conversation about phenomenological experience. And so when a person asks, how do I know if I'm hyper aware? They may also be wondering, how many people are hyper aware, and are we naturally drawn to others who are hyper aware? And that's definitely a set of interesting questions, because
so
go ahead.
So how many, before you can be hyper aware, you have to have that analog all. So how many people have that analog all?
Probably not very many.
No. I mean, it's that's why we're working so hard on that.
But once you do, to answer that second question of, are we naturally drawn to others who are hyper aware? When you have a understanding of the totality of existence, you probably are drawn to others who are like-minded and have that understanding of the absolute and have developed those structures in the psyche. I also saw another comment from, I think it was Joanna at the beginning of the stream, saying you can't be hyper aware 24/7 because you would go insane. And that's actually the next question that we have, which is does one attain hyper awareness indefinitely? Are you hyper aware forever?
That is a really good question. I'm sure a lot of people probably wonder about that. So if you think about this logically, you would recognize that once you have that analog all, you have it. And once you've popped over to hyper awareness, which is, not that far from the analog all, it's not something that you lose. It's again, we had another really good, when we were discussing this, we had another really good metaphor. Once you've created that structure, it doesn't go away. I think the way people might think about it is, and there's another little question here that kind of relates to that Mark had written down, that it's something that hyperawareness is a tool. This is how we think people might think about it, that hyperawareness is a tool that you then employ, but it isn't. It's a structure that is now in you, and so it's always there. It does not mean that you are going to suddenly act like all the time, as
It kind
though.
of reminds me, sorry to interrupt. I
Sorry.
was going to say, it kind of reminds me of that old quote. I've said it on a few live streams, and Mark would know who said it. I can't remember, but it's once a mind expands beyond its old dimensions, it can never return to those old dimensions.
Yes, it's exactly like that. Once you have that, you're not going to forget it. You're not going to uncreate that. It's sort of
You
like,
can't put it back in the
no,
box.
you can't. Once you've moved on from thinking the earth is flat to knowing that it's a sphere, you don't
Mhm.
lose that. You don't go
And
back.
it's not like being in hyperdrive. You're not going to switch it on or switch it off.
Right. But I think that one of the reasons that people have a hard time or have questions about this is because of the way we kind of visualize it, or the way we think that it's used, instead of being this structure, or it's more than the structure. Hyper awareness is more than the structure, but I'm specifically talking about the analog all. But we tend to think it's a tool. It's like a superpower that you will employ sometimes, or if you are, and this is the thing that Mark had written down, which I thought was really hit the nail on the head, where people might ask, well, what if you're really advanced and very knowledgeable in psychology and self-awareness, but you're completely lacking in political knowledge? Are you hyper aware if you're ignorant about what's going on the planet? And the answer would be yes. If you are hyper aware, if you understand how reality operates, it doesn't matter if you're not super knowledgeable in, geophysics, or, history of Europe or something.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if you don't speak every language. You don't need all of that. What you need is an understanding of reality, that this model of reality and how it operates, and the understanding that the triune perspective, if you have that, and then how you're contributing to the consciousness of the absolute, and that's what we're
So
doing.
you're saying I don't need to be able to understand every math equation?
No.
That's good because I'm not in tune with advanced physics or things like that.
Right, but
And I think that's what people sometimes wonder, like, do I need to know extensive math or
yeah, the math comes in. Oh, Angela, once you are awake, you shall remain awake, is Nietzsche. But I think, yeah, you don't have to be, a mathematical genius. The thing with math, I don't want to turn people off to math either, because the studying the math is what is going to show you that, oh, this is true. That without that, you are accepting it. You can,
Mhm.
and I do that on a regular basis for a lot of things that I haven't gotten up to
But
yet.
the math plays a role in understanding the rational structure of reality.
Yes, yeah, it does. And it's really very like when we did the Fourier book, it's
Mhm.
extremely valuable. It's you don't have to have that. You can
Yeah.
know that the Fourier transform is the method for how the you have both sides. You have the frequency domain and you have the holos, the space time. But it's certainly very gratifying
Yeah.
to the more you know that way. So I don't want to turn anybody off on that.
So
Um,
someone else asked, will I achieve hyper awareness in this lifetime and will I lose it when my avatar dies?
right. So that relates to once I've acquired it, once I've established this analog all and attained hyper awareness, do I lose it? And again, if you think it through, I bet you guys would say the same thing because we know that when we're little, we don't know stuff. We don't know
Yeah.
stuff. We have to learn things.
And there are
However,
probably people who go lifetimes without achieving hyper awareness, or, there are many people who are in a basic level of self awareness.
we're only
Uh,
now as a collective getting to the point where we're starting to understand that
yeah.
where some people are actually getting there. So, you know, getting to hyper awareness in this lifetime is a it's not everybody is doing it. I mean, most people aren't even, they're barely self-aware. So what happens is, if you, let's say you achieve, you create the analog all, you achieve hyper awareness, and then, excuse me, you're you die, your avatar dies, and you're relocalized. What happens when you're little again, and you're growing and you're learning and you're getting self-awareness, you have that hyper awareness is part of your zeta. It's part of your higher self. You may not have it yet in your current avatar situation, but you still have achieved that. And that is why people, we are relocated. We are we bring stuff with us. We bring the ability to reach information, knowledge that we have already. And some people may not, depending on what kind of life they have, may not get that, but some people will reach it, and grab it back down again
Yeah.
and become
And you
conscious of
may,
it.
when you're relocalized, or when a hyper aware zeta is relocalized, you're not going to start out like, a toddler being hyper aware and talking about the absolute, but you may be better able to conceptualize existence.
Yeah. I think a lot of that has to do with, um, when we learn some things in this
Mhm.
lifetime, some things will feel very familiar. You'll feel it's almost like, it's we're just relearning things that we've already known. And how you meet some people and they just really feel incredibly wise,
Yeah.
and they
Old
don't even
soul.
yeah, that's what, yeah, call them, think of them as like old souls. So the answer to that is, you have it, it's part of you, but you don't have access to it immediately. um
Mhm.
you know
And then
Let
the
me,
last question that we have goes back to what you were talking about with the phenomenological experience. And that question is, would psychedelics enhance my hyper awareness or make it easier to achieve? And this is an area that I have a little bit more experience in than Susan, even though Susan's very fascinated with it. Not that I'm trying to speak for you. But I would say to everybody who's curious about psychedelics, they can definitely provide for you an opportunity to experience that phenomenological experience. But I wouldn't say that it will enhance you as a zeta beyond giving you insight. It's not going to unlock anything for you. And I know I've said that before. I had a quote that I added in right before we went live today, and it's a quote from Terence McKenna because it got me thinking about all sorts of other things. And this quote is: "The only difference between a drug and a computer is that one is slightly too large to swallow, and our best people are working on that problem even as we speak."
I've
Which is very
never.
interesting because when you take a psychedelic or when you use a computer, what you are doing is you are experiencing frequency content. You're experiencing it two different types of ways. When you're using a computer, you're experiencing frequency content of the internet, of electric impulses, things like that. And the same with when you take a psychedelic. So I really like that analogy because the purpose of the phenomenological experience in providing you a tool to enhance your hyper awareness is being connected with the interconnectedness of reality. So you can think of a computer that doesn't have Wi-Fi. So if a computer that doesn't have Wi-Fi, it's not going to be able to do a whole lot in terms of interconnectedness. It's just kind of what it is. It's a computer. You can do basic tasks with it. You can kind of think of that like self awareness. But when you're connected to the internet and you have that interconnectedness, similarly, when you're taking a psychedelic and you're experiencing that phenomenological experience of oneness, of unity, of interconnectedness with the whole, that can be very beneficial for having that experience that contributes towards your hyper awareness. And I really liked that. I was really pondering the differences and comparisons between those two before we went live today. And you said
Yeah.
you've always wanted that phenomenological experience, but you intuitively understand it.
I yeah, I'd like to actually experience it. It was Terence McKenna. I think Bridget asked. Yeah, oh, Elise just answered you too. It was Terence McKenna. Um yeah, I have had moments where I have experienced unity. And it was beautiful. It was like out in nature kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Just one of those where you kind of go inward and it's almost meditative in a way. And
Yeah.
then so I can see how people can experience this through deep meditation, from my little little experiences. However, I haven't had that sort of really overwhelming sense of wow. I just read somebody's explanation description the other day, and it was just like, yeah, I was just everything. And it wasn't that. It was more of a
Yeah.
strong sense of unity with everything. And I really would like to experience that. I feel like, yes, I do have an incredibly strong idea about it, the concepts, and I get it and I understand all of that. But I think Morg is definitely on the right path by saying that phenomenological experience is an important concept. And in the same way, you don't want to just have phenomenological experience. You do also want to have the rational and the intuitive, components. You want to have all of it. You want to, ideally, everything. But I tend to I'm definitely on the thinky side as
Yeah. And
opposed
I
to
do
the
want
experience.
to highlight that phenomenological experience is a little bit difficult to experience. It's not just what we're experiencing every day, all the time. So it is because if it were, everybody would be experts at phenomenological experience.
Right.
But it's not that you have to take psychedelics to experience that. They are handy as a tool and they can show you insights into certain things and allow you to experience that unity and interconnectedness with the whole and whatnot. But that phenomenological experience plays a role in all of your tools that you use to become hyper aware. It's just one piece of the puzzle. Um, but I did want to highlight that it's not just everything that we're experiencing all the time. It's a little bit more than that. It's a little bit deeper than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the phenomenological experience is the direct experience of that unity, of that
Mhm.
oneness, as opposed to um, just, all of the experiences we have throughout the day, which are those are, just experiences.
And I think it's also very absolute perspective oriented, because when you take a psychedelic or when you reach a incredible point in your meditation or void state or whatever, there's a little bit less of the ego self and more of the perspective from the absolute.
That's what I
So
want
you're
to
not,
experience.
yeah, so you're not really focused as much on the avatar self. So in all of my experiences, whenever I did psychedelics, it almost feels like Philip Shope is shed away and I'm a part of the whole. So you're not thinking of when you're in that experience, you're not thinking of, oh, I'm Philip Shope, I'm sitting on a couch, I'm doing this and this. You are connected to the whole, and that's a
Yeah.
huge distinct. I think that's why it's so helpful as a tool, because it kind of pulls you out of the avatar and the Zedic perspective, and you're slapped into the absolute perspective.
I really want to experience that.
Yeah.
There are things that come close. I mean, I'm not just things that I've experienced, but think about unity when you're in a large group of people and you are all very, vibing the same way, especially if it's a situation where it's not something that is sad, although I'm sure it can happen there too. But more of like if you're at a concert and the energy, you can feel it. You're all together, or you're in a group meeting. I attended one once, and this was just like a social group, but we all were on the same vibe for a short period, and there is something that's really nice about that. It's still not the same as experiencing reality as the oneness, as that and that is what the phenomenological experience is. Like a concert star. Those experiences are great for feeling like it's more, that things are more than just you, that you are a collective, that wow, there's other people and we're all together. But again, it's still not quite the same thing. I think a Neogenian meetup would be a really positive thing. And that goes back to the, let me just finish. That goes back to the, are we attracted to others who are hyper aware? And I think, yes, we are definitely, once you get a certain, a certain distance into this material, you are definitely drawn to others who are also into it, because it's like, a kindred spirit, somebody else who sees reality the way you do. And that is why we're working toward getting everybody to have this analog all, and then and then hyper awareness is very close to that.
I can tell that this has been a really popular topic because of all the excellent comments that we've seen, and we didn't even get to everybody's comments, and we apologize for that. But it's been amazing how fast this hour has flown by discussing.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It's so difficult to squeeze in all the information that we want to cover while also answering as many questions as we can. So if you guys are interested in this stuff, please leave us a comment on this video on our Facebook, the Neogenian Oculus, or anything like that. You can send us messages and we can potentially do future live streams to cover more of these concepts.
Bridget already said we need another stream on this, and I think it's great. I'm glad you guys liked it. I know we didn't get to a lot of comments. I wanted to say hi to JP, who I know came in late. I'm so sorry you did, but I hope you can come to our members stream. Sarah, I'm glad you finally came and met everybody. You can see it's a really great community.
And thank you to Ryan, who's been a member for 5 months at the waveform level, says off topic, but tomorrow starts LGBTQ plus month. It's more important than ever to celebrate it. Hold on, it's scrolling, than it's ever been. Don't let our pride get stomped out. Absolutely. And happy Pride Month to everybody.
Yes.
Also, just to remind everybody, we are doing a member stream right after this one. So if you are a member and a couple of you were gifted memberships, feel free to come to that and we can try and answer more of your questions there.
And hi, George. Are you new? Thank you for coming, and I'm glad you thought it was great content. We really enjoyed this one. We always talk during the week before we do a live stream, and go over the material, and it gives us a chance to visit different topics. And we really enjoyed the nights we had this week talking about
Yeah.
this.
And
And
also, just for anybody, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, for anybody who is not, if you want to become a member on Discord, we're doing the Nexus Academy tomorrow, Susan
tomorrow,
and I,
yeah,
and we're reading Morg's books
yeah,
there. I think we're pretty close to finishing Meta Rationalism. So you will get a
yeah.
lot of Susan and Philip for
For
the
tomorrow too. It's
weekend.
a long weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, so welcome, George. I'm glad you could be here. This is a great community. I know that you're very vocal, and everybody seems really, like eager to talk and be very positive and uplifting for everybody. And I love seeing that. So, okay, good. We'll see you in a few minutes, JP. So I have posted that link on our board already. Just give us a few minutes and we will pop in there. And I think Philip told me that he has some fun stuff that he wants to talk about.
Yeah, we can talk about some stuff,
Okay,
things and stuff.
things and stuff. Okay, so we're gonna sign off, and we'll see you in a few minutes or in a couple of weeks when we come back in June already. Okay, bye, you
Good night,
guys.
everybody.